Something big just happened. Volvo just hiked its truck prices across the board. And it's not a coincidence. This comes directly after Donald Trump's latest America First bill, aimed at slapping harsh tariffs on imported truck components, especially from Europe. Volvo, one of the largest foreign truck manufacturers operating in the US, is now under intense pressure. Trump's fiery speech last week called out foreign automakers by name, yes, including Volvo, accusing them of undermining American jobs and warning of economic consequences. Within 48 hours, Volvo responded, not with words, but with price increases averaging 12 to 18% on new, heavy-duty models like the VNL series and electric FH models. Dealers across the Midwest and East Coast are already reporting order cancellations, panic among fleet operators, and whispers of mass delays. Internally, sources say Volvo executives are furious, with top leadership calling Trump's bill a direct hit to global manufacturing integrity. But they're not backing down. Volvo's next move? Rerouting parts of their supply chain from Europe to North America, while quietly lobbying behind the scenes in D.C. through third-party trade reps. At the same time, Trump is doubling down, hinting at additional tariffs on battery components, which could cripple Volvo's electric truck rollout strategy by year's end. And here's where it gets even more intense. Volvo isn't just reacting. They're now preparing a contingency plan to pause future investments in their U.S. facilities if these tariff threats escalate. That includes the expansion of their Dublin, Virginia plant, which was slated to boost production for next-gen electrics, trucks. Insiders say those funds are being quietly redirected to Canada and even Mexico, where trade agreements remain more stable. Meanwhile, U.S. truckers are caught in the crossfire. Owner-operators and logistics companies that rely on Volvo for fuel efficiency and uptime are suddenly staring down tens of thousands in added costs per unit. Some dealerships are holding back inventory, waiting for clarity, while others are issuing stark warnings, buy now, or risk paying 20% more in the next quarter. Trump, for his part, is using this moment to rally support, claiming these disruptions are proof his policy is forcing foreign companies to respect American workers. But Volvo's global leadership is already preparing a formal challenge through European trade bodies, arguing that the U.S. is violating WTO agreements. Behind closed doors, Volvo executives are coordinating with EU regulators to potentially trigger retaliatory measures. Think counter tariffs on US-made trucks and components exported to Europe. This would escalate the situation into a full-blown trade war within the trucking sector, something the industry hasn't faced at this scale in over 2 decades. Meanwhile, analysts warn that this standoff could send ripple effects through the entire supply chain, from steel suppliers and transmission manufacturers to logistics tech firms that depend on stable truck production cycles. Even more alarming, leasing companies are now revising their 2025 rate sheets, anticipating that the cost of owning or leasing a Volvo truck could spike by up to $30,000 per unit if no resolution is reached. And the panic isn't limited to Volvo buyers. Other manufacturers like Daimler and Packard are watching closely, fearing they could be next in Trump's policy crosshairs. Volvo's legal team is said to be drafting a multi-phase response, including public statements, press campaigns, and even joint lobbying with rival European brands to push back against what they're calling a coordinated economic siege. Volvo's media strategy is shifting too. They've pulled back from standard promotional campaigns and are instead pumping resources into crisis communication teams in both Washington and Brussels. Expect public messaging in the coming weeks, aimed at painting Volvo not as a foreign disruptor, but as a vital contributor to American jobs and clean energy goals. And here's a twist. Insiders claim Volvo is exploring the possibility of partnering with US-based suppliers to localize more production, not just to skirt tariffs, but to reposition themselves as a Made in America brand under pressure. But make no mistake, this isn't surrender, it's survival. Trump's camp, meanwhile, is celebrating the price shock as evidence that his pressure tactics are working. He's already hinted at future policy tools, including federal fleet purchase preferences for US-based truck makers only, which could effectively freeze Volvo out of lucrative government contracts unless they adapt fast. Industry experts say we're now in a high-stakes game of economic chess, where every move by Volvo could set a precedent for other global manufacturers operating on US soil. And that precedent is already shaking the confidence of international investors watching how America treats global brands post-Trump's policy revival. Volvo's board is now weighing long-term strategic shifts, including a drastic reduction in US-bound exports and focusing more heavily on EV truck deployment in Asia and the EU, markets where regulatory support, not resistance, is accelerating growth. At the same time, back in the US, smaller freight companies are already pushing back, some threatening legal action, others calling on Congress to intervene as they face skyrocketing costs just to replace aging fleet vehicles. The American, trucking associations have yet to officially take sides, but several state chapters are demanding emergency meetings to address what they're calling an artificial supply shock. Meanwhile, leaked memos suggest that Volvo's next product announcement, originally planned for Q4, may now be delayed or completely scrapped as executives fear further US backlash. What's even more telling is the internal shift in Volvo's tone. Once confident about the US market, executives are now openly questioning its stability under Trump's second-wave economic nationalism. Supply chain teams have been instructed to fast-track diversification plans, with particular focus on Southeast Asia and South America, where demand for long-haul trucks is surging and political conditions are less volatile. Simultaneously, European truck makers are beginning to form an informal alliance behind closed doors. Volvo, Scania, and even Renault trucks are reportedly in talks to present a united front against Trump-era tariffs that could cripple transatlantic trade in the commercial vehicle sector. Meanwhile, American dealers are facing the backlash from customers firsthand. Fleet managers walking out of showrooms, citing unpredictable pricing, and contract negotiations freezing mid-process, as buyers demand clarity that simply doesn't exist. Volvo's pricing model, which used to be rock-solid and globally harmonized, is now fragmented by region, with US models priced significantly higher than identical European builds, fueling a gray market for imports that could further complicate the legal landscape. Customs enforcement is already tightening in response, with US officials cracking down on unauthorized imports of European-spec Volvo trucks being rerouted through Canadian ports, a workaround some desperate buyers are exploring to avoid the inflated domestic prices. At the same time, logistics giants like UPS and FedEx, who maintain sizable Volvo heavy fleets, are reportedly re-evaluating future procurement strategies, with sources saying both companies have begun reaching out to Chinese and South Korean truck manufacturers as potential alternatives. That alone signals a dangerous shift. If global corporations begin diversifying away from legacy brands like Volvo, due to US policy instability, it could spark a new era of foreign dominance in the American trucking space. Volvo is now racing to finalize emergency pricing models that soften the blow for long-term commercial partners, including limited-time rebates and back-end dealer incentives. But the damage may already be done. And Trump? He's doubling down on his rhetoric, telling supporters in Ohio that foreign truck makers had their run. It's America's time to drive the road again. That soundbite alone sent Volvo's American operations into PR lockdown, with press contacts instructed to go silent until further notice. Inside Volvo's North American HQ, the atmosphere is tense. Multiple high-level meetings have been held over the past 72 hours with executives from finance, legal, and strategy departments drafting a survival roadmap that includes possible workforce reductions, production slowdowns, and the renegotiation of existing dealership contracts. Dealerships themselves are growing restless. Many have invested heavily in Volvo infrastructure, training, and parts inventory under the assumption of long-term price stability. Now they're stuck holding overpriced stock while buyers flee to competitors or delay purchases entirely. Some are even threatening legal action against Volvo, claiming the sudden price spike violates contractual pricing protections. Meanwhile, the ripple effects are being felt in unexpected places. Rental fleets, maintenance firms, parts suppliers, every link in the trucking chain is now strained by the uncertainty. Behind the scenes, Volvo is engaging third-party lobbying, firms in Washington to quietly propose tariff exemptions for specific drivetrain components and EV technologies. But with Trump's team showing no signs of compromise, those talks are stalling.